What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the You Know Ball podcast. I am your host, Troll Bro Dude, and this is the preview for this week's Patreon episode, the NBA Disaster Rankings. I had Young Parm and Daniel Sohn on to talk about the teams that could be potential disasters this upcoming season. So this section is the honorable mentions. So this is the teams that we think could be potential disasters, but are probably a little bit too talented to be actual disasters come this NBA season. So if you want to see the entire top five that I had listed and some other teams that Daniel and Parm also included, please subscribe to the Patreon. We're almost at 150 subscribers. It's been absolutely amazing so far. I really, really appreciate everyone who has supported us. And if you can support us, I would really appreciate it as well. As I mentioned on my last episode, this will be my full-time thing soon. I quit my job. I'm taking the leap, and I'm trying to make content making my full-time thing. So any support that you can do, whether it's $3, $5, $10, whatever, I would really, really appreciate it. So please check that out in the description. And then also, in addition to that, we dropped a bonus episode on YouTube this week. You can go check that out. I interviewed Ken Walk, who had a hilarious interview with me. We talked about the Eagles, Sixers. Please check that out on the YouTube channel. If you're watching on YouTube, please like, subscribe, turn on your notifications. Thank you so much for your support. And if you're listening on your podcast platform of choice, please just give us a 5-star review. So enjoy this clip, and please subscribe to the Patreon if you are able to. Soon I'm going to be able to make content around the clock, basically. So I'm really, really excited for that. And the more Patreon subscribers we get, the more I can focus on that. So thank you once again, and enjoy. Parm in the same room together. Before we get into anything, Daniel, you have a new album coming out. You want to drop the details?
I do. Oh, I'd love to drop the details. I have a new album coming out next Friday. It's called Let's Go. It's called Outside. There's 4 singles out from it currently. The most recent one was on last episode of the pod. We got a music video coming out for that on Saturday. If you dig the singles, you're going to dig the album. If you like fun, enjoyable music from the past 50 years, I think you're going to like the album. I started recording it like kind of right at the onset of COVID. And I think for a lot of people, COVID was a time to make music that was very like reflective and inward and sort of, considerate in that way. And I did not want to do that. I spent all my time thinking about myself and improving. And so I wanted to make music that was really extroverted and fun.
Outside. Love the title.
If you will. You go. So if you like city pop, if you like yacht rock, if you like 70s funk, if you like 90s R&B, we got a lot of fun vibes. I think it's a big vibes album. It's a really easy. I'm a big 10 songs max on an album guy, so you can pop it on your drive to work or whatever.
Love it.
I'd love if you checked it out.
Yeah, the brevity of it is great, and the singles have been fantastic so far. We've played 2 on episodes that you guys have heard so far, so you can pre-save that. We'll put the link in the description for this episode. Please support Daniel and check out his tunes. But today we are going to get into, what were you saying, Parm? Parm and Daniel, for those who are listening on audio.
What information?
Did you end up getting Scott Stapp?
For the real Creed enthusiasts.
For real Creed heads, did you end up getting Scott Stapp?
Yeah, keep an eye out for the bonus track.
It's like the Janelle Monáe feature on We Are Young. Like, he's listed, but you don't even know that he's actually on the song. Like,
you just ghostwriting the track,
blended in
the background. You hear like, yeah.
It's like auto-tuned and chopped up. Yeah, I know. It's great. Look out for the Scott Stapp sample / feature on Daniel's new album, Outside, that's coming out.
Creed album.
Yeah, or if you don't want to listen to my album, go listen to Creed. You can do that too.
Either or. I mean, either way, you're supporting great music. So
that's the key. Yeah.
And art and saving the arts. You save the arts every time you listen to Creed. So what we're going to get into today is the NBA disaster rankings. So this is something I've wanted to do for a while. I've teased it a few episodes. Basically, we're going to go down the teams that we think can be potential disasters this season in the NBA. And if you've been following Media Day, there have been a lot of candidates. Let's just put it like that. Very weird things across the entire NBA. I wanted to start with the Suns. So what do you guys make of, DeAndre Ayton being held against his will and looking like a prisoner of war in all these interviews?
the vibes are horrendous, man. I don't know what's up. I really have, for a long time, I've really tried to be like a Chris Paul defender, and I still am to an extent as like a player. But it's hard to deny that like those vibes are just absolutely tanked.
He's the anti-Ricky Rubio.
He's the finisher.
Yeah, he's the finisher, and then after 2 years, cooked. You're done. So move on.
So Chris Paul comes to your team. He brings you back to relevance. He brings you to the playoffs. He gives you some respect around the league. He did it with the Pelicans. He did it with the Clippers.
Mm-hmm.
He did it with the Suns. And then within 2 to 3 years, your vibes are absolutely fucked in the toilet and you have to blow everything up. That's really the risk of acquiring a talent like Chris Paul. That is a massively talented and great NBA player, but also just a complete cancer in the locker room. Apparently, this is clearly all. It has nothing to do with their owner, who weirdly the star continues to like kind of defend. I don't know if you guys heard Devin Booker, but he was like, "That's not the Robert Sarver I knew." I was like, "Oh, the Robert Sarver you knew is the one that haven't we talked about this on the pod before about how he like told everyone to vote for Trump for their taxes, like everyone who was on the Phoenix Suns?"
That doesn't shock me in the slightest.
He tells them to vote for like Sheriff Joe Arapo, the guy who owns like basically a concentration camp, and and he supports his campaign fund, but that's not the Robert Sarver that Devin Booker knew. That was that's a different guy.
The Robert Sarver he knows gave him $30 million a year to be kind of okay at basketball.
To be the 17th best player in the NBA. It's amazing to give someone that much money. You have to be a good person, is what I always say.
They don't just give the 2K cover to anybody.
No, sir.
So they're holding DeAndre Ayton against his will. They're actually, so just to get us started on this, they're in my honorable mentions because I think vibes-wise, they're very bad. I think, like you guys said, Chris Paul has outstayed his welcome. He rapidly aged by 50 years in the middle of a playoff series for the first time in NBA history. DeAndre Ayton obviously is being held against his will, looks absolutely miserable, depressed, does not want to be there, but basically is stuck there until at least January. You have this whole Robert Sarver thing going on. Jay Crowder is forcing a trade right now, but I still think they're just too talented to be a complete disaster. Like, in my honorable mentions tier, I have the Suns, the Celtics, and the Nets. And the reason I have those three teams as honorable mentions is because a disaster for those teams would be like being in the play-in or missing the playoffs. And as weird as the vibes are there, I think that they're still too good talent-wise. Like, you have Devin Booker and Chris Paul, you have Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, you have Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. Like, you're not going to be anything outside of the top six. And if you're not out, and if you're in that top six and you're competitive and you're in the playoffs in a tough Eastern and Western Conference, I don't think you can be considered a complete disaster.
Oh, certainly. I mean, I'm not going to bet against Monty. I'll bet against Monty as a playoff coach. Yeah. Certainly. That man turned fucking Bismack Biyombo and Frank Kaminsky into rotational players. That's a miracle. That's
a miracle
insane.
Worker. It's true.
He made campaign like a 6th man of the year candidate.
The Suns are going to be weird. The Western Conference is stacked now. Like, the Western Conference is fucking loaded. I've been thinking about it. Like, just think about every podcast that I've been listening to. Think about the teams that are locks to make the playoff in the Western Conference. And it's like the Nuggets, the Warriors.
I don't know. I don't know if I don't know if are they. I don't know.
Are they on your disaster list? Is that what you're trying to say here?
They're one of the teams that I think is a disaster.
The Nuggets or the Warriors?
The Nuggets.
Okay. So, do you have any honorable mentions before we get into your list?
Yeah.
I would say the Heat are an honorable mention for me.
Okay.
In the same sense that, like, will they probably make the playoffs? Yes, but like,
yeah.
I think Jimmy's certainly going to aspire for more, and the team took a pretty significant step back around him, unless you're like super Omer Yurtseven pilled, which I respect, but I am not.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah,
I think the Hawks and the Knicks are my honorable mentions because like it feels like kicking a child like really hard. It's like you shouldn't do that. Like they don't know any better. They're just gonna keep building their dog shit team. It's gonna go badly for them, but everyone knows this is gonna happen. You know?
Yeah, I can't imagine being a pitiful franchise like the Atlanta Hawks, who, could you imagine losing to that team in the playoffs?
Yeah, and I couldn't imagine. I couldn't imagine watching Trae Young score in the paint against a 7-foot tall man who refuses to defend him. I also couldn't imagine making that guy the starting center for a championship hopeful team. Things happen.
No, hold on. Not as all. And speaking of my honorable mentions, the Nets, they still have disaster. Like someone said, they're the boomer bust here. Like they still have disaster potential because you never know what you're going to get with Ben Simmons and Kyrie Irving. But I do think that their team, roster wise, this is probably the best Nets team 1 through 8 that we've seen. Really? Because you don't think about how, even when they had Harden, their bench was like Tyler Johnson, Jeff Green, Landry Shamet. Now you can look at their bench and be like, okay, you have Patty Mills. We'll see. What's that?
Seth.
Does Seth start? Does Cam Thomas come off the bench?
He's better.
Rondé Hollis Jefferson.
Yeah.
He's besmirching the good
name
coming
of
back. Rondé Hollis Jefferson and Zanin Musa.
You have Edmund Sumner, dude.
I'm a little Edmund Sumner.
Of course you are. All
the Pacers scrubs are like so sick.
And they have all of them now. They have half a foot TJ Warren. They have who's not going to even play to start the season, but they at least have some young talent. Kessler Edwards, Day'Ron Sharp. Like they have guys who could potentially be rotation players. Royce O'Neal could come off the bench for them.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Royce is good. I think losing Bruce Brown is such a massive L for them.
It is. I agree. I totally agree with that. I think that so if it's either Joe Harris or Royce O'Neal are coming off the bench, one of the two.
Yeah.
And then one of Patty or one of Seth. I would imagine it's Patty with Seth starting. But like that 1 through 7, 1 through 8 is a little bit stronger than they've been in the past.
That's true.
And I don't think that they're like a stacked team. I could see them making the play-in and that being like seen as a disaster when you have Kevin Durant, like obviously making the play-in. But the East is really fucking good. And kind of going back to your Miami point, like, I think that I would only go as far to say as there are 3 locks to be playoff teams in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah.
I would say it's the Bucks, the Celtics, and the Sixers are the 3 teams that, even with the Celtics weird vibes, once again, is going back to that, like.
But they're going to be good.
They're going to be good. Like
adding no one good for the last 3 years, adding no new players for 3 years.
Who?
Marjan Beauchamp.
The Bucks.
Oh yeah. Respect Marjan.
They're like barely off the honorable mention list because I'm like, well, because you have Giannis, but like, they're committing like the big sin of like being a good basketball team, which is not continually getting new good players every single year.
I think that will eventually catch up to them because. You have Chris Middleton and Drew are both aging out. Like, I mean, it's inevitable that Brooke, Drew, and Middleton will not be as effective potentially in the middle of Giannis's prime.
Yeah.
I think the Nets are like very similar to the Bucks in construction and situation of like, you have like a really top heavy, strong 3, stars, sub all stars. But I think the thing with the Nets for me is like, tit for tat, all of them are a little bit worse than the Bucks top 3
for sure.
And it a little bit feels like when you're like 6 seasons deep into 2K and like you're like, my team is full of 90 overalls. Why do we stink? And it's like they don't really make sense together. They're just like good.
Totally agree. Like my whole starting lineup is above an 85, but I'm getting bounced every year in the first or second round because going back to the Nets, I know we're kind of bouncing all around here, but like. Going back to the Nets, like I think the major reason why I had them as my last team before I ranked my top 5 was because I still feel as though the Celtics and Suns are going to be good deep and talented enough and well coached enough that they will be like in the playoffs for sure. So I think that's definitely going to happen.
Well coached? Disagree.
by who?
Steve fraudulent.
No. I'm saying the Celtics and the Suns.
Oh, okay.
I don't know anything about this
guy. Big Missoula guy.
Yeah, huge Missoula guy.
Love his actions.
Yeah. No, I support everything. Wait, what? Let me drink a big cup of water and read about his past transgressions. No, but it's like, I don't know anything about that coach, but I do think that the Celtics, generally speaking, if Brad Stevens is going to hire you, you're probably going to be like, Udoka was obviously a great coach. Stevens was a great coach himself. He had good assistants while he was there that got poached from other teams. I think that guy's probably going to be fine. Like, I don't, and I also don't really think the Celtics need that much coaching. Like, Al Horford's basically a coach.
Yeah, you got Allen Marcus here.
They have Marcus Smart. Like, I'm not as concerned about them. The Nets, on the other hand, the reason why I almost included them. What's that?
Added a former president of the Players Union as well to that team, and Malcolm Brogdon, which I didn't. And a current
vice president in Grant Williams.
Oh, that's true. I didn't realize he was doing that either.
They're presidential folks. Dang. The Celtics are presidential. Yeah. So, but going back to the Nets, like, the reason why I think that they have potential to be like, we could be sitting here, and I've been saying this for a while. We could be sitting here in December and January, and the Nets are the 2 seed, and I'm not surprised because of the talent they have. We could also be sitting here saying they're looking out, they're in the play-in, they're in the 8-9 range because of the weirdness, because of the uncertainty, and also because, like, I look at every other team in the Eastern Conference, and I see Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, big, Jimmy more so than Bam as terms of offensive firepower, but like big wing type, big, like talented big. The Bucks have Drew, Middleton, Giannis. The Sixers have Harden, Maxey, and Embiid. The Celtics have Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. Like, the Nets wings, the Nets' best wing is also Ben Simmons. Like, defensively, he's their best wing, but he also is going to be their center, and also he's wants to play guard. So, like, who is the best wing when you have TJ Warren is cooked? I don't know how many times I have to say this. I've heard from 3 different people TJ Warren's cooked going back to, like, March. Like, I don't know if he'll ever play a meaningful minutes in the NBA again because of his foot. Like, that's how bad it is. Foot and ankle. Then you have Royce O'Neal as your best defender, like, on the wing, because, like, look, KD's capable, but, like, he's also your number 1 guy on offense. And he's not going to be, you don't want him to waste all his energy doing that. Like, of all the teams that I put in this honorable mention tier, I think the Nets have the highest level of disaster potential because I feel like their roster just, once again, does not really make any sense to me. I think they have a lot of good talent, but also, like, in a league that is dominated by, like, scoring punch and, like, 2-way wing type guys or guard type guys and super talented bigs, it's just going to be really, I just don't see a way that they're going to be able to slow down literally anyone. So they just have to lean all the way in to be the best offense of all time. And maybe they can be. I don't know.
Let me throw a concept at you. I just came up with this. What if they used Ben Simmons like Draymond?
Hold on. Can I one-up you on that?
Yeah. What do you got?
All right. What if Ben Simmons, Benjamin David Simmons, born Australia, went to college, LSU, drafted number 1 overall, Philadelphia 76ers. What if he was like Giannis Antetokounmpo?
That's fucking interesting. Shit.
What if he just took a little human growth hormone? He just took a little HGH, a little D-ball, Ben
might be the only player in the NBA that wouldn't benefit from that, because the thing that he is really disastrous at is having touch and shooting. It would make him so strong that he would just never.
Like 2002 Barry Bonds, like he's just wider than he is tall.
He's just shot putting basketballs from the free throw line.
Dude, is the Nets photographer doing a bit, or why do they
Yes.
keep posting these photos where Ben is just like Lonzo Ball fakakta to the side still? Like, it does not look good. It's not promising.
I think the Nets didn't realize that part of it was artistic direction, but part of there was scientific intent for why every Ben Simmons shooting video on the Sixers was shot in 380p. Like every single one. Like it's the most low quality, like toaster oven image.
They shot it on an LG chocolate.
Oh yeah, it's shot on a Motorola Razor.
I know, crazier.
And then, like the Nets are like going high def, which I think just is like, oh, then you can notice that it's that they're full of shit.
Subers would never.
Yeah. Also, as people have pointed out, the shots he's taken in practice are all the same shots he took with the Sixers in practice and in games.
Yep.
Which is like when he was taking those shots, it was always those like post up baseline fadeaways where he's falling away from a smaller defender who has no chance. Like he was shooting over like David Duke and like 6 foot. I just had to bring up his name. Yeah. Oh, David Duke Jr. I'm sorry, the son of David Duke. My apologies. But like, it is funny that everyone seems to be building up the hype for that, and then immediately, once again, weird vibes why they're in the honorable mentions. Steve Nash just coming out and saying like, yeah, we don't care if Ben ever shoots, and then I'm like, now someone else gets to experience the same thing that we got to experience for 5 years.
The Steve Nash stuff especially made me just be like, man, Brett Brown was so good.
Yeah.
Like that poor fucking guy really tried his best. He crowdfunded support for Ben Simmons shooting a basketball. Like he did his damnedest.
But unfortunately, like the funny thing about that is the fact that of all coaches, like a guy that literally knew your dad, like you had your respect from day one when you came to the NBA. You didn't listen to that guy. Then you didn't like, and say what you will about Doc, and like we all have our own issues with Doc, but then they brought in like a veteran coach to try to get through to him, former point guard, whatever, and he's just back in the same exact situation. And like, look, I think Ben will probably. I'm still a believer that Ben can be, if he ever can get over whatever mental whatever he's going through, can be a good fit on the Nets and can be a good player. I just think that what he's going to be asked to do this year, is going to be so much on both ends of the court. Like, it's going to be like, he has to be involved in basically every action on offense to be a useful offensive player. And then on defense, he's got to guard the best player every single night, whether it's a guard, a wing, a big, whatever it is. And then also, like, who's protecting the rim on that team in the starting lineup? Like, is it Kevin Durant? Is it, or are you starting
maybe?
Do you have to start Nick Claxton?
But then can you? Because like Ben's not going to shoot, and Nick Claxton can't shoot either.
Exactly. So that's like if you start Ben at center, and we're talking about that lineup, like, okay, let's say they start Claxton, they put Ben at point guard, they put Kyrie, Kevin Durant, and Royce O'Neal. Then you have all your shooters coming off the bench except for KD and Kyrie, but you would ideally want spacing for them. It's just once again, as Daniel said, the roster just doesn't really make any sense from a two-way perspective. Like, it just doesn't really add up to me. So like, I was very tempted to put them in my disaster rankings, but I had them number 6 because I feel like it's, if you have Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and you're relatively healthy, you're going to win 40, 45 games and be the 6th seed at worst, I think. But we'll see. They definitely have, like, could fall apart by midseason like they did last year. And then Kevin Durant's asking for a trade again in the middle of the season. And look, I gave you the opportunity and blah, blah, blah. But okay, so let's get into, do you guys have anything else to say about your honorable mentions? Because the Heat one was interesting to me. Because I think that the Heat are not a lock for the top, but I still think that they always figure out a fucking way to get in there.
That's their one thing. And I guess is if they can just like invent like 2 more guys, then like,
they will.
Yeah. But like, I think in the event that doesn't happen for them and like the Nets to an extent, I think like that's a part of why they have a greater disaster potential to me than the Suns or the Celtics. It's like if the Suns or the Celtics needed to bring a guy in, let's say like a sub all-star, like solid role player becomes available halfway through the season. They just have like tradable contracts and desirable players in a way that like outside of their top end talent, the Nets and the Heat don't really at all.
Yeah.
So like if things go south, I don't know how you make adjustments midseason really.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the adjustment with the Heat is, like you said, Hayward Highsmith becomes like a really good role player.
Which
like
could be. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm betting on one of two things happening. Hayward Highsmith is either a good role player for them, he becomes a rotation player, and we're like, fuck. Or we cut Isaiah Joe, and then Isaiah Joe goes there, and he's like the new movement shooter off the bench for them.
Too.
Like small Max Strus basically for them. He just goes there and he I'm gonna throw that prediction out there that Isaiah Joe at one point will be on the Heat and be good, and it will make us very mad. So
you're from fucking Illinois, my guy. You're from Illinois.
Strauss.
Yeah,
you're
from Illinois.
Yeah, it's George Niang syndrome.
You're from Munich. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, everyone thought George Niang was from. I thought it was Georgius. I thought he was. Yeah, he's from Massachusetts, but I thought he was from Europe. I just assumed that.
As you would. You would. Same thing with Max Strus. It's like you're not allowed to have that name.
Yeah. Till I saw him wearing an Entourage shirt, and I'm like, "There's not a person in Europe that watches Entourage. You were in a frat, 100% chance."
Imagine if like Bertans came up to the mic and like he was like, "Oh yeah, my name's Davis. I'm from Oklahoma." Like,
Davis Bertans.
Yeah.
Davis Bertans.
Yeah.
It's like Stephen Colbert. His real name's Colbert, but he goes by Colbert to sound cool. Yeah.
Classic.
Okay, so I'm gonna get into my first team on the disaster rankings here.